Episode 13 of A Dose of Sinsanity is underway. I am GR3. I am joined by Welshie and Jamokin. How's it going, fellas?
Fantastic, man. It's been a great couple of weeks for Greed, so I'm in a great mood.
Well, I'm tired, but other than that, I'm fucking awesome, my man. How are you?
Clearly a little bit more awake than you, but that's all right. We're going to wake up here in a bit. Let's kind of jump into it here. Like you were saying, it has been a fantastic couple weeks for Pot of Greed. A couple weeks ago, we were unsure, are we even going to make it? We split in that last week 6. We knew that the tiebreaker system could go either way. Luckily, by strength of schedule, we were able to get in and kind of on a roll. Take us through that, Cappy.
I kind of just had this moment of like I've been trying to learn how to be a captain for like the most of the season, and I think doing an okay job. I think considering that I've never done it before. I know I've been involved with 82L for quite a while, but I've never really been involved in a captain role of any kind as far as 82L is gone. The most that I ever did was basically be the PMA coach of like getting people away from like negative attitudes into the game.
Yeah, you get to be like the co-captain in a sense. You get to be like the fun captain, you know? Like you get to be everybody's friends and like
try to.
People don't hate.
Yeah, your job is just to make their job is to make sure nobody hates you. That's like that whole job.
We're 7 seasons. Yeah. Fuck that GR guy.
No,
we love Welshie. Fuck
exactly.
We're fucking 7 seasons.
But it's a lot of
fuck Welshie.
Indeed.
Yes, go Greco.
Indeed. It's been a lot of learning though. I'll be honest with you, and a lot of just kind of experimentation. And I just kind of realized that I kind of got into like just the brackets, and I was like, okay, I know we have the talent pool, and I feel like me doing all of this stuff, drafting, researching, and everything, trying to shot call, I just kind of realized that this isn't to me a time for me to learn. I don't want to just give our shot on the idea of oopsie daisy, I drafted wrong. So I just kind of had a realization of like, I mean, shit, I have the winning captain from the winning drafter, I should say, from the previous season of the highest rank in 82L. Why don't I just give it to him?
You were correct. What's captain?
Yeah, both. Like, why don't I just
we're not
ask
gonna
him
call,
to
we're
draft?
not gonna shout his name out. We're just gonna
shout out to Naya. Shout out to Naya.
Freaking Alara.
You're right.
There we go. There we go.
Like,
get some love for my boy Naya.
You did say shout, right?
I did say shout out. I just realized that he could draft probably way better than I could, and as simple as it is just like I'm not good at it. Naya has a better mind for it. Let's do the best thing our team can, which is if it comes down to decision making, like there are split second things and some shot calling, I do it. But Naya can draft way better than I can. Billy actually, surprisingly enough, knows how to analyze a team for their weaknesses way better than I do, and I think even better than Naya does. He literally sees the exact weaknesses in their play and calls it out very, very well, and kind of gives us a better game plan of how to proceed. It's just a lesson of, how do I put it? A captain is only as good as his players, and to that degree, I have great players that I finally feel like I'm utilizing to the full of their potential and their abilities, not just in game, but outside of it. And I think that's led to. Good.
It's the idea of play to your strength, correct? So you identified, as a captain, you identified what each player is strong at, and then you utilize it in the most effective manner.
Exactly. And it's just important to remember, though, that I think I was just kind of isolating it to like, okay, what are they good at in game? And then I would kind of realize, like, well, why don't I just, like, why am I not thinking of this as in terms of outside of game too? Like, I don't need to do everything, in full honesty, even though Greco did in every other season. I can hand reins to people, like, who are better at this shit than I am. And I just kind of had a moment of, like, why haven't I been doing this since the start? Like, the captain doesn't have to be the drafter, doesn't have to be this, doesn't have to be that. Like,
no, that's absolutely correct.
Yeah, I help with everything. I help Naya talk it through. I help do the research. I help talk to Billy to understand what he thinks his weaknesses and kind of back and forth on them. But ultimately, I have my fingers in everything, but I'm not doing everything, which I think was pretty big.
That kind of goes along the sense of a head coach in like a football team. You have your offensive coordinator, your defensive coordinator, but the head coach is typically neither. You oversee everything, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing every single aspect. You need to delegate to specific people. You can make the strong overall call, but each person is going to have a job and responsibility of their own. And then you're going to have, once again, like the offense coordinator, defense coordinator, where you, as the captain, you have the final say in things. But then you have others who handle kind of those smaller responsibilities. Still large, but not as large as overseeing it all.
Yeah, I have to 100% agree with you. I think that's been the difference maker, though. And I think it's just kind of the pot of greed thing of the moment the ball got rolling, everybody is just hyped up as hell. And I'll even admit, kind of wavering on whether or not we were going to get into brackets in the first place. Like, people were kind of not really, I think, practicing as much and really putting in the effort. And then now that we're kind of rolling through like demons now, we are really, like, everyone's showing up to practices, like sending me ideas, like asking me to play, like, because they want to practice some new things for the games this week. I'm like, holy shit. Everybody woke the fuck up. Let's go.
You see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly.
And that also brings back to the point that we mentioned prior, where we're not interested in being a week 1 team. We're interested in being ready by week 7. And I think everyone in the league is really understanding. If anyone else, Goldfish Gaming and Keep Yourself Safe are really understanding, hey, we're a week 7 team and we're ready to go.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a little bit weaker before, but figure ourselves out. Are there any other contributions you think other than the drafting that's really amped us or kind of been a large part of our success the last 2 weeks?
Personally,
I know you want to say it. Just say it.
I mean, fucking Sean's a badass. I'll be honest with you.
Yes.
Like, I can't like just not weigh on him. Like, he's been there when we've needed him, and thank God he was able to sub for you, but he's just come through a couple of times when we really needed him to. And in games, that was huge.
I will forever say I am the MVP of this season by having to work through the entire playoffs so that somebody better than me can actually play.
Yeah, we literally lost our fucking one, like, because he had work because, I mean, Greco, like, I'm talking like he's not here, but yeah, you have work you have to do, so now we've lost you for the season, which sucks.
Which is, like, the main reason I wasn't going to play this season, was, like, or at least one of the many. But I looked at the schedule, like, I cannot play through the entire month of July and like early part of August. So why the hell would I play if we make playoffs and not even on the team? So it's actually working out in our favor, though. I will say that.
Seems like it. I just hope we're going to keep the win streak going. We're studying up. We're ready to take on Bark Warden, which I got to say, great series watching them against, I think it was Aftermath. Was it Aftermath?
At least the first 2 games.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, but I don't know what game 3 looked like. Aftermath was tired and ready to go home.
Yeah, game 3 was really interesting. That Meepo kind of like really blew my mind with not taking any more levels in Poof except for one. Did they put levels in stats before leveling Poof?
He died to a neutral camp, not paying attention to his Meepos. And this was a Grandmaster. Oh, God. That just told me ready to go home.
That tells me you were not comfortable. And I don't just mean on the hero, but like just the high stress situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because things start to wane, especially when you're in these playoff games. Like, these are the highest stress games you're really playing at our caliber. And so it really pushes everything to its limits. And sometimes the small things slip away from you.
Oh, I felt that. I felt that a bunch, especially like when I'm playing like Axe in like a very important game. I will pre-Culling Blade more often than I can say.
Well, keep in mind too, like when you pick a Meepo, your team's pretty much saying you're gonna fucking win the game for us. We're here to support you. We're here to cheer you on. But if you're playing Meepo, you're winning the first fucking 20 minutes of the game for us.
You're the win condition.
Yeah, you are the win condition. And that's a lot of pressure in a like lose and go home scenario. And I don't know if the guy just cracked. I don't know if he was tired. It was getting late. It was a nightmare to watch, and I feel bad for saying it because the other Meepo game, he was outstanding. But it was just that particular game, just something was off, and that's sometimes all it takes. You go home.
Yeah.
But definitely looking forward to sitting at work and watching the Bark Warden matchup. because I don't get to play anymore. But no, I am pumped. You guys are literally just rolling, and it just feels like everything's clicking. I could tell the amount of fun and the excitement in the game, which is, in my opinion, some of the most important things is to really enjoy it. Like, you want to win, but it's fun. It's even better when you're having fun and you're winning at the same time.
Oh, absolutely.
In my experience, you've already won at that point. Like, if I'm having fun in like my playoff games and I'm truly enjoying myself, I probably win like 99% of those.
Yeah, 100%. It's so much easier to even play the game when you're in a positive attitude as well. But I want to bring up, so there was a lot of talk about the tiebreakers, and mainly the sense of, well, Pot of Greed doesn't deserve to be in here.
What team was that
They,
again?
I'm not going to bring up names. I'm sure
I
if you
forget what they were. Didn't they get knocked out though?
well,
I
yeah,
or
they
at
did.
least they're on the lower side,
Well,
or
no,
like
they didn't even they didn't even make it.
Oh, okay.
There was one who did recently get knocked out by Pot of Greed this last week. Who
That
also
was
had an
Keep
issue
Yourself,
with it.
right?
I'm not going to say the names, but the shoe fits. The shoe fits.
Yeah, I think
Um,
they were the ones trying to call you out, and then they got
but
their ass beat in a
if
convincing 2-0.
Get knocked out by an undeserving team. That's all I'm going to say.
yes, but is the tiebreaker system actually working in the aspect of, there's a lot of arguments, like we got 2-0'd by BKB, who did not have the tougher strength of schedule. Arguably, the player swap for Goldfish Gaming, them propelling 6-0 in the last 3 weeks, and basically made our strength of schedule like better. There's a lot of saying that we didn't deserve to be in there, and now all of a sudden teams are getting knocked out. Do you feel like Pot of Greed has actually shown and proved that, hey, they deserve the spot? And also, do you feel like maybe the tiebreaker system is working? Because clearly, in my opinion, Pot of Greed deserves to be in the playoffs. We are a Final Four team. We are essentially better than at least one of the upper bracket teams.
That's just kind of the period for me, is simply that if there's a discussion that has to happen again about us deserving to be here, it's just kind of a thing of showing the system has worked. Like, we got into playoffs, and on top of that as well, we're now top 4. We've defeated 2 other teams who had a better score than us, because exactly like you said earlier, we're week 7, and we're at week 7 and we're going off. And
Yeah.
I just don't think there's a discussion anymore of like, hey, look at that. The team you thought didn't deserve to be there has now defeated 2 teams. Like, what discussion is there to have?
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. And I'm excited once again to kind of see where it goes, because not done yet. You know what I mean? There's still 3 weeks to go and essentially 7 wins to go in order to win the whole damn thing.
Which also, let's bring up real quick that Dark Horse knocked Kirchu, which was really surprising for me. I have not gotten the chance to watch their games yet, but that was
surprising. Oh my lord, you need to pay attention to every single. I was talking to Naya about this,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I was talking to Stanny about it too. Forever, the team that I will never want to see in the playoffs in Champions League is Dark Horse. Every single freaking season, for no reason, like they could be having a subpar season, look like shit, and then all of a sudden they just beat the shit out of everybody in playoffs. And they're, in my opinion, the most clutch playoff team and the most terrifying team to face in the playoffs, period. No surprise to me, actually no surprise to me that they're into the grand finals.
They've never placed low, have they? Like, consistently, they've placed in like a higher bracket position, which it just
they've had lower bracket either last season or season before, but they always win at least 2 games in the playoffs.
Exactly.
In the playoffs,
and that's still with the Kirchu, like with their near perfect season in group stage.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, and it does feel like Kirchu's vulnerability is starting to be shown. They have dropped a few games the last 2 weeks of playoffs, and then obviously lost to Dark Horse, who, once again, Dark Horse is a nuts team. But yeah, it's shaping up to be something else, that's for sure.
I'm interested in the effect that the losses have had on their mentality. like we kind of talked about, you go into this thinking that you're going to sweep, like you're at the top position by a big margin. You feel like you're going to go in and sweep the whole thing, like from to start to finish. And then you just got knocked by a team that has now put you in losers brackets, and they're in your seat waiting for winners, which, for me, that would just make me uncomfortable. Like it would make me kind of question myself, and that would be a punch in the gut for sure. In the confidence.
I think you'd be scared, right?
Yeah.
You were thinking that you're the top team, no one could touch you. All of a sudden, that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're in the lower brackets, and if you lose one more time, you're done. And granted, they are in the lower bracket finals. But the other thing to me is the fact that Kerchu played Dark Horse this week. They had the bye. And the way the upper brackets work, if you don't know, is you play the first round, you get a bye week, and then that next week you play, and the winner of that goes to the finals, the loser of that goes to the lower bracket finals. But then there's still 1 week before playing again. They essentially have 3 weeks, Dark Horse does, until they play another game. That to me feels like a really long time, and like you could kind of lose some touch a little bit. I feel like they need to find scrims, and scrims at this time of the season, especially when teams are breaking up, new teams are forming, it's going to be hard to even find those. So I think like Dark Horse, once again, I believe 100% deserves to be there, but I think they could be in trouble to whoever makes it to the grand finals to face them.
Yeah, fair enough. I completely agree.
Let's move on. Let's talk tonight, 8 Eastern, Town Hall. Y'all ready?
I am.
Yes.
I think it's going to be a spicy night.
It's always fun. I'm excited to kind of hear some opinions and things like that. And obviously, we just touched on the tiebreaker thing. What's going to be brought up in that? If anyone is unsure of what to expect, what was released was a couple of housekeeping things, weight changes going into season 36. The big thing of that is essentially the top, from what I understand and talking to some of the admins, the top 3 divisions are going to be moving up 1 star, and the rest are going to be staying the same. This is, I believe, part of the Kiki step plan in order to eventually move in and get that immortal division. In the next part of the housekeeping is ranked requirements for season 36. Jamokin, your favorite one, the 15 games required. I believe you brought this up last season in Town Hall. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was last season when I was pushing for the at least have people play some number of ranked games to show that their rank is, at least if you're going to sandbag, you at least have to put the effort in of actually playing the ranked games and staying there.
Right. That's we'll call it the Master Z rule.
The Master Z rule.
The Master Z rule. Major issues that they are thinking about bringing up: group stage length and format. That's always, I believe, a hot topic. Tiebreakers, which once again we kind of talked about. The playoff format, and they say especially hearing from everyone on how it felt to have an 18 playoff. Personally, I think it's amazing. We have an 8 seed in the top 4, so I think there's quality in all of them. Stand-in and roster replacement rules. I believe that Pot Agreed could be in a little bit of trouble for what we're doing this season, but you never know. And then same goes to like Goldfish with having that big roster replacement at the end of the season. And I don't know if you would call it issues, but something that's going to be brought up. The minor issues, limiting the amount of teams one player can play on in a season. I thought, honestly, personally, I thought that this was addressed a few seasons ago, especially with Gambit playing on multiple teams and multiple divisions.
Well, how does that work? You have to get constant reschedules, or
he managed to not miss a single game. This was season 28.
Why do we have to revisit this? Isn't the rule fine?
I guess we're gonna find out here at 8 Eastern. But
I
yeah,
suppose
I
so.
thought that was already a deal, but clearly it wasn't. I thought that was solved because, well, once again, Gambit managed to play in Intermediate League and Contender League in season 28. I think Revamp did the same exact thing, or maybe it was Divine League and as well as Contender League. And then the last minor issue they plan on bringing up is possible increase in entry fee, which is exciting. I believe that Dose of Sinsanity is responsible for that one.
Possibly.
I actually have
Don't-
news on that one.
Don't take credit to that, but
Oh!
hold on. Yeah, go ahead. Don't just say like we're the reason they're raising the rates.
I have
We're the
news.
fucking one that
I-
brought it up to Seth.
as
Screw
as I
everyone
spoke to
else.
Seth today, actually. Talked with Seth today a bit about the PSGS Invitational and how it kind of works with 82L and whatnot, and we are using their website and whatnot, and we had a talk, but we started talking about town hall a little bit and the increase of entry fees, and it sounds like $10 entry fees. That's the word from
Let's
Big Top
go.
Seth. He said unless everybody literally says they hate it, it sounds like they're bumping it up $10. And actually, he said a lot of teams sign up late anyways and ended up paying $10. So
That is,
he's like, I'm not too worried about it being an issue.
can confirm. Can
Yeah,
confirm.
can confirm as running our own tournament. People like to sign up last minute.
Yes. So if you don't want to pay the extra, don't sign up last minute. Easy.
Exactly.
Early bird special.
I'm 100% with it as well. I mean, again, it's just to understand that, just to state this, and I know we've gone over this 1,000 times in podcasts and talked about it for a long time with Seth, but it's all in the name of increasing the quality of content and the quality of the tournament overall. Like, now this gives them the opportunity to not just float by, like, keep the website up and maybe occasionally get somebody to stream and, do the finals. That's kind of cool. But now we can do like consistently increasing the quality of things that are going on, get better casters, make the whole experience of 82L a little bit better and a little bit more fun for everyone, and give them the opportunities to do some really cool stuff.
And they can afford to send their admins to AA meetings.
Hey, okay. Actually, what I was gonna say is, as the league grows, so too must its coffers. Is kind of where I was thinking with that. I think it's the easiest and best way for the league to naturally continue its progression.
Yeah,
Is that
I
more
would
money's
agree.
coming in?
And as big as this is getting, especially on like the not so much in-game shit, but all the content and all the extra like theatricals, I guess. This is going to keep it going bigger, larger, and leave room to grow. And that's essentially what you want in a league. Is you don't want to stay like be stale, and you want it to continue on in a positive note and keep growing.
Yeah.
My question though is, and I have my own opinion about this, but is the town hall, do you think, a positive thing? And should there be more town halls within a season? Maybe a mid-season town hall or something along those lines before playoffs.
I think that you don't have a mid-season town hall for the same thing we've always said, which is that rules don't change in the middle of a season. I think it's really good for everybody to just kind of accept that, like, hey, this is the way things are. Like, you'll have a time for us to change the rules and have a real discussion on if we do in the town hall. Like, to me, discussing rule changes when rule changes aren't possible is something that I find a little bit asinine. I mean, I get it. Let's discuss it outside of season, like in the season, because or at least note down that we think we don't like this. But ultimately, like, let's have a real serious discussion about it when we can actually do a change, is my mindset.
Well, here's my thing: is I don't think you necessarily need to have rule changes, but I think it's a good chance of breaking down what people saw in the groups and taking that feedback channel that is always popping and actually getting real notes through it. And I think it gives a little bit more time for those rule changes to be made and a little bit more adjustments so that the smaller stuff that people are really having issues with they're not spending a couple days in order to get this thing, like the rules set up and for the future, and they can actually think about it, and um, it gives the time for more preparation and being able to bring up more things. Obviously, I don't think that rules should be changed mid-season, but I do think it's a good time to discuss halfway through of where are we going, and a little bit of a refresher before the next town hall. Like it's almost like, say, like a mini town hall um right after week 6, and then, or I guess if we're moving up to 8 weeks, then after week 8, and then we go into the playoffs, and then in between seasons, like the one that's today, essentially, then we go over the new rule changes and things like that, and what started in the first town hall and can be brought to light into the second.
Is for me, the thing about the town hall is like this is when I feel like ideas have to be already thought out in what you're going to say and propose to everybody. You don't kind of just come up with it on the fly. Everything's all you have your notes in front of you. You're ready to present. It's like the work presentation. You did all the work, and now you're just going to lay it out there for everyone to look at. And so I think that town halls are when the most amount of things get done, as opposed to the feedback channel where it's just
It's a mess and a
regurgitating
lot of
yeah.
circles.
Yeah, like I always said, the only useful part of feedback channel is the actual feedback channel where people put their ideas, and then like the next two messages in feedback discussion, because after that it's just a mess.
Well, the thing that I always see is there's always, here's the problem, and there no one wants to come up with solutions. They just want to bitch.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna bitch, that's fine. Like I welcome your bitching, but be constructive. Come up with an idea. If you don't have an idea, then think about it. Come back to it. Present it at the town hall, like when you find one. But don't just keep bitching. Don't go around in circles saying this is wrong or fuck your idea or shit like that. Like if you don't have a solution, just don't open your mouth. There's no point ever in any aspect, not just 80/12 feedback channel, but ever. Don't come up with or don't present a problem if you don't have a solution for it.
The only way to present a problem without a solution is be like, "Hey, I'm not sure this is how this should be done. What does other people think?" And then build the idea off that. But to
Right.
just say this is stupid and you constantly just complain about it, or you bring it up in a negative light, that's not useful for anything.
I agree. I agree. Um, so let's kind of move on though. We are getting into the point of the season where new teams are starting to be constructed. And you're seeing the free agent channel just pop off in actually a lot of different leagues. Um, a lot of teams are disbanding, whether captains are leaving or just unhappy, whatever the heck the reason is. But there's a lot of free agents out, and people are grabbing them up like crazy. Uh, so let's kind of discuss like when do we, I shouldn't say we, but when should a captain, how do I explain this the best? When should a captain tell the rest of their team that they are splitting up and they need to get into that feedback channel? Is it something where it's dependent on the situation, or is it something where, hey, just get them in there as fast as possible so that they can find a new team?
I think it's how you brought them in. So it's kind of dependent on the situation. Like if or as soon as you're aware that you may not be playing next season. And I'd say the latest you'd want to let your team know would be around quarterfinals or semifinals of lore. I think this would be about the time where you'd be like, "Hey guys, I'm just letting you know, win or lose, however this run goes, I'm proud of each and every one of you, but this is my last season. So or this team won't be playing another. So like let's fucking go out with a big bang here, boys, and let's crush it, you know?"
Is that
Because that's how I personally approached it. Before our series, I was like, "Hey guys, like, no matter what happens here, I'm proud of us, but this might be my last one. So, let's give it everything we got. Let's get it."
should you say this during, like, right before, like, on the Thursday, or should you discuss it, like, either after the series or within the middle of the week, do you think?
I would rather you do it at some point before the series, only because um, if you do it after and you lose, it can look really, really salty, and you don't want to make it seem like a negative thing that this is happening.
I think that it's
That was
also
what I was concerned about.
yeah. I think it's also something to I think it's also something of like you players should be letting their captains know, and captains also need to go to their players and say like, hey, are you if they are continuing, are you down for next season? Like not just assuming like, hey, like we're gonna run it back, right? Like obviously you're staying. I don't have to look for another like 3 or 4. And it's like, no, I never said that.
From my perspective, I always assumed we were running it back unless you told me so.
Which is my point. Like you
I-
need to be. I would say, I would say that you need. I think captains need to reach out as well. Like don't just assume your players are going to play next season. I think it's a wild.
The way I see it is, I have you signed. You know, like
Yeah.
you're signed on my team. I have like your rights.
I have your rights. I have
And
taken your
so-
rights and I have them.
Yeah, I can see that. I personally, what I think is it depends on the situation. If it's something where it's a guy who you're just unhappy with and doesn't have a very good mental state, you probably don't want to tell them until after the season. And the reason being is you need to keep them focused on winning. And if they don't have a good mental state, there's always that possibility that they take it as, well, fuck this team, I'm done. And then they just throw. And especially in the higher like tiers, sometimes all it takes is one person not to be on their game in order to lose. And if their just idea is to kind of grief the entire game, then I'm going to do whatever I can to prevent that. And
So
then I'm telling them after. But if it's somebody with a good mental state, somebody who like you haven't had any issues all season with, it's just a positive atmosphere and it has been all season, then yeah, like there's a point to saying, I want to make sure that you have the ability to get onto a team next season. The hot time of feedback, or not, rather free agents, is right now or in a week or was last week or something. I want you to make sure that you can get out there and you have a place to go, but make sure that we're still focused in that time. We want to continue and we want to make sure that we're grinding in order to get to our end goal, which is winning the championship.
I mean, so from my perspective, like this, I've never had like super weak-minded players like that, so like I can't kind of comment as to how you should address it if they're not, I guess, completely mentally sound. I don't know. That's not the best way to word it, but you get what I'm saying.
I do.
So I always wanted to let them know just as soon as possible. Because the issue is, especially if you go like that week 8, like there's just no time. There's no good teams. All the players are gone. Like, how do you make a team? How do you make a team after the final play after finals? You can't.
Oh, God. We've
It's
done it-
terrible.
we've done it twice.
And how bad was it?
It is awful, man.
It is
It's
terrible.
so hard to find a player. And like we've seen it in the past where we don't tell anyone, or we just kind of realize after we made it to the finals or something, hey, this person is not going to be with us next season. They try to get into feedback, and they just have nowhere to go. It's forced retirement essentially.
It's a
I also
season
think
off, right?
It comes-
Season off, forced retirement for a season.
It comes to a point where you as the captain also have to be aware of like what kind of players you have on your team. And if you recruited somebody that is, you know, fairly weak-minded, you got to look at yourself and figure out how that happened.
Oh, I agree.
Like there's nothing worse than you can do than, you know, get somebody who's
that's a really good idea, kind of to build into the next thing I wanted to speak about, which is how you value like when you're trying to find players. So for me, and I've already told our entire team what my game plan is. Sorry, I'm a legend now, a legend one in playing in Champions League. Well, hardly since I can't.
You and Gambit, man. Holy
But
that Explorer
hey,
League.
I'll see you in Explorer League, Gambit. But so my team already knows I'm not gonna be like on that roster next season, whatever happens. I'm just a legend. I'm new position. I need to be playing with my rank. So when I'm looking right now, I'm looking for players where they have a few different things. They got to be a decent guy. Like that's got to be the first thing. Like you got to be a decent person. If you're going to tilt, if you're going to yell at your own teammates, we tried out a guy who, for one of our positions, that as soon as the game started going south, started playing the blame game. And sorry, we're not trying you again. Like I'm just not, because you're going to lose games, and I want to make sure that when that happens, spirits are still high. It's constructive. We can figure out what's going on. If you're going to put blame on everybody else and not take blame for yourself, I don't want you. The other things I'm looking for play style. Are they, if I want to run, say, a fast paced team, I don't want guys who are naturally passive and want to sit back and play the hour-long game. And the last one's the hero pool. If their hero pool does not fit what I want to draft as the drafter, then I'm not even to consider them. Nothing against them, but if you're not fitting the style that I want to play, then naturally, then there's no reason that you belong on this team, because you're just not going to mesh.
And I want to add to that point is like that conversation goes both ways, right? Like no player wants to be forced playing a style they also don't want to play.
For sure. And I think that's the big part of, like, when you do quote unquote tryouts, it's not just for you're trying out for the team's trying out for you as well.
100%. As a free agent, like you have to know your worth and make sure you're kind of getting it in that sense. You know,
There's
you're
no harm
engaging these
trying
things.
with a whole bunch of different teams.
Oh
No.
yeah.
You're going to find what fits you best, and that's the team that you're going to be most successful on.
Yeah, it's also really hard to have enough time to kind of try all the people that you go out to. Because I'll say this right now, like one of the biggest struggles I had was when I was trying to find players was I'm reaching out to like every one of them that I can, knowing that like half of them are not going to respond and that they're just not going to say a thing to me. And trying to balance that with, at the same time, I need to get enough info on you guys. Like I'm trying to schedule games with all of you, because what I would really love to see is, 1, how do you play? 2, how do you communicate? 3, how do you win? And 4, how do you lose?
Oh God! First off, that's the biggest fucking thing. So
You have to approach each player like that.
I forgot how, like, that was one of the things I was looking at. I forgot to put that down. Winning is a really big trait that you need. Somebody can be, say, like a legend, whatever, but if they just straight up win and they're used to winning, like that's a trait I want. You may not win every single game or most of your games in rank, but when you get to league play, do you win? I want guys who have been to finals. I want guys who've been to the final 4. And those are my first picks, because I want guys who know how to win, understand what it's going to take at that bracket, and are used to doing so. There's a big trait of just straight up being a winner.
Oh, sorry. Did you call my name? Yeah, I heard winner. That's me. Hello.
You have
What's
one.
up?
You have one.
Hey yo. So there was a few things you said that I kind of wanted to touch on, and as well as you, Welshie, is you talked about trying players and like scheduling time to like play with all these people, right? Because it's important to see how they work with your team. And one thing I've always not been a fan of, I know Greco, we haven't always seen eye to eye on this, but one thing I've always not been a fan of, if people always want to see what these players look like in scrims, and like it's like their first time seeing the team, and people are putting them in like the highest stress situations you can put them on to qualify for a team. And so now you're playing with all these players, and you don't know how they communicate, you don't know how they play, you've never laned with this support before, and you're just expecting this guy to just instantly work. And hey, you might find the guy that just clicks, right? And that's great. But sometimes somebody might need a little bit of massaging to like kind of fit into the roster, and they'll make a great teammate. And so I
That's
always think
you
that's
got
one
me
thing that needs to be
confused.
considered.
I am 100% behind you on that. And
Oh,
because
you are? Okay.
we've talked about this before, the idea of pub versus scrim, and
Yeah.
like scrim is important to me for, and we talked about this once again, for the drafter.
Yeah.
It's mainly meant for the drafter to figure out how to put everything in, and there's a time and a place for that. But when you're trying out, and this is the route that I've been taking, first off, get as many freaking pubs as possible.
Pubs as possible.
And if you're a captain, you need to be playing every single position with that minus the mid lane. Because in the mid lane, your mid laner's playing on his own. But in order to really evaluate, in my opinion, you need to be playing in the lane with that person to see what they do and what they know. For example, like I plan on playing one. So when I'm trying out guys at 5, I'm obviously playing one with them. When I'm trying out guys at say 3 or 4, I'm playing 3 or 4 with them so that I can see what they're doing in the lane and we can talk about it. Just because you have like you're drafting these people or grabbing these players based on the style of play, say it's aggressive, doesn't mean that they fully understand what you're talking about. So you're going to have to openly coach in the middle. And like you said, you got to groom them. For example, I have coaching set up for some of the guys who may not even be on my team, but it's investment from the team to the player that you want to make sure that, hey, if you so decide, first off, I'm showing I'm fucking serious about winning. Second, it's making sure that they can adapt to the play style that you want. You give them a coach that understands that style and understands you, and they can teach and coach in that style. And then you put it all together. And if they can keep up with it, then yeah, like you want them on the team. If they can't, and it's just not them, then it's just not them. But it's an investment that you make.
And one other thing, well, you kind of touched on was holy shit, I lost it. It was so good.
How do you lose?
Where'd you put it last?
No, no, I got it. I figured it out.
Retrace your steps.
So you talked about their mindset on how they lose and making sure they fit within the team, right?
Yep.
And that's I think first and foremost the most important thing. I agree with you guys there. But I think the next thing, most important thing for me is, do they want to get better, and how much effort are they willing to put into that?
Yep.
Because like I've always been really big with my team. Like getting better is like the number one thing I expect from my players. You guys, I expect you to be working your asses off to get better at this game, and like digging deep when it needs to be done, and like going all in at trying to get better. So if you're just gonna show up and like not really give a shit, and even though you have a great mental like attitude, you gel well with my team and whatever, if you're not willing to like grind with the boys when I need you to grind, it's a no for me. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's very legitimately true. And that's a mentality that I think it's different with every team. And obviously, I think yours is a lot of respect to it, of people who are just like, look, if you're on this team, you're here to 1, win the league, 2, get a lot better at this game by grinding and being better and like doing the work with us to become better. 1 as a player and 2 as a team. Some people, I think, who come in this league, and it's perfectly fair, are just here to play to have fun. They want to play with their buddies and have a good time. And I think it's fine to do that, but you have to make sure the people you're bringing on align with your attitude.
Yeah, the other thing too is if you're expecting that out of your team too, you as a captain need to put that, like you need to do that as the captain.
Yeah.
It's not something where you can ask somebody to put in 100 hours or 100 games a month, but you're only putting in like 25 or 50. If as a captain, you have to lead by example. And if you're
You
not
have to be the
doing-
hardest worker.
Right. So, and that's the other thing too, is as a captain, you, especially when you're building the team, you have to make sure that you're not just getting the games in, but you're also evaluating the games and talking to them saying, well, this is what needs to be done. This is what I expect for the play style that we want. But if you're not willing to put in that work, then you're not going to get that type of player.
Yep.
And it's fine. It depends on what you want as a captain. And sometimes real life gets in the way. And that's ultimately more important than a video game. But you have to understand, if I'm only going to put in 25 games a week or 10 games a week or 15 games a week, I'm probably not getting the guy who puts in 100, 150. I'm going to get the other guys who put in 15, 10 or 25 say games a week. That's just what you're going to get, because you're not going to appeal to those who really grind.
I mean, exactly that, right? Like, and nobody wants to be like gotten at for, oh, dude, you're not playing nearly enough games. Like, you're not showing up to practices and things. It's like, if you don't like that, like, you're not going to meld. Both ways.
I do want to call like one player that I think is like a premium example of somebody I think that like works really fucking hard. Lorenzo. Dude, I see that guy. He's playing day in, day out, no stop. A guy is a machine. Every time I get on, Lorenzo's in there. He's grinding it up. And like for me, like I see that kind of player. I'm like, that's the kind of shit I like to see. I try and grind as much as I can. But back when I was playing, like, and I always expected my teammates to like be like that, put that effort in, and invest in themselves. Because Greco, you made a point of like investing. You invest in the players, right? But I also want to see my players willing to invest in themselves.
Right. Well, I follow 100%. I'm curious. So when you're putting together a team, where do you put your value? Like, first off, where do you see your value positions at? And do you value those at the higher skill like players, or the way you put that? From what I see and the way that I've typically built our teams around, is the highest priority is typically my 3, my mid, and probably my 4 is typically where I say these are the highest like value positions. I want my highest ranked players in these positions, and then go from there. And that sounds a little weird where I'm beefing up the off lane and the mid lane, and I'm kind of sacking the safe lane. And there's different points behind that. But where do you guys see, if you're putting together, say, a fresh new stack, where are you guys putting your highest MMR players?
Number 1 is mid. Number 1. Mid laners can win games entirely by themselves. I think every other lane depends on having somebody in that position. Like, it's again the simplicity of being that they're the first ones to come online in a big way. Well, sometimes let me say that. And it's the only lane where it really is it's not based on your synergy with your teammate. Like, I think in the side lanes, you can obviously have, like, you can have 2 lower ranked people, but as long as they have really good synergy and really good communication, they can win lanes against like upper tier guys who have shit communication. But
so I'm actually going to counter that point, because after the mid lane's over, this is where your mid got ahead and is supposed to make plays, right?
Yep.
But if he doesn't synergize with the rest of the people on the team, or like no one's good enough to make plays with him and like keep up to his pace of play, ultimately it doesn't matter how good he is. If these plays can't happen, they're not happening.
See, to me, that's where I value the offlaner the most. And the reason for this is, when I hit the mid game, yeah, my mid laner needs to be there and needs to be able to play and can win the game, which is why I say mid laner number 2. But my offlaner is typically the one that is the playmaker. He's the one who has the big ults, a big team fight, and is going to show a lot of aggression. There's times where mid laner needs to be farming where the offlaner gets to play. Your offlaner is typically going to be dragging your supports by a leash and saying, we're going here, we're going there, and we're going to make plays. And you can essentially, as an offlaner, take over a larger part of the map single-handedly than any other position, or basically any other position. If you have somebody who doesn't understand how to do that, or is just significantly lower in skill than everyone else, then you're going to fall behind in that aspect. And what that does is, the offlaner, to me, if you have an offlaner that gets behind, you're going to lose the game.
And that enemy carry gets a good start. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he gets a good start, and even if you draw, or like the other safe lane isn't as great, you're just behind, because the off lane is the easiest lane right now. It's significantly easier because safe laners just can't stay there consistently. You can't keep going back to the lane.
That's a really good point, especially because, like, I'll be honest with you, like, when you lose as the offlaner, it sucks, especially because it feels like there's when you're losing, you feel like you have like there's two parts of the map that really belong. Like both halves of like your side belong. One side belongs to the enemy, to your carry, and one side belongs to your mid almost. Like when your mid's farming like safe lane jungle, you're
Yeah.
off. You're safe laners in the triangle, and it's like, well, I'm behind. These guys have farm priority, and I have to put myself in really dangerous places if I want to get it, where I'm probably gonna feed. And if I know that I'm gonna feed there, I'm not going there. In which case, well, now I got my thumb up my ass because there's nowhere for me to go. Right?
And then you're
that's rough.
impeding on everybody else.
Or or you're impeding, which is even worse.
So for me, when I think of I don't necessarily give any other position, I think, more credence than any other position. They all have their role to fill in the game, and if that role is not filled, I feel like you kind of just lose. The biggest thing for me, so I'm kind of inclined to say my position 4 because that's naturally where I look to have my my shot caller to be. Sometimes it's my pause 3, but I think the highest skilled player on my team is going to be my shot caller, whoever's making those shots, because they're going to set the tempo for the rest of the game and make sure everybody knows what's going on. And that's always been, I think, the most important thing for me.
I can definitely understand that. I think here's where things get a little different. When you're looking for players, there's also the idea of value players. Of they're significantly lower in MMR for XYZ reason, but they play above their metal or above their rank. For example, in season 34, I dropped almost a full metal in order to grab this specific position 5 because I trusted him and I knew that he's a great shot caller. He understands the movement of the games at a level much higher than what he actually is ranked at. And he has that impact of somebody who is a full metal higher. To me, that's super value. And I can trust him, even though his rank is low, I can trust him to play at the level that I need and direct. So in certain circumstances, yeah, there's the position 4 or whatever, like you want these higher like ranked guys in these positions, but if you have those value guys, which I really believe those value players like that win you the league, then you're fine. You can start stacking in the different areas. But that brings me to another point I want to ask you guys. Would you rather prefer a team that is top and bottom heavy or somebody who's kind of like, let's say I'm looking at, I don't know, we'll say like an Ancient 1, which isn't a real division, but say Ancient 1 average league. Do you want all 5 players being Ancient 1? Or do you guys want, like, say, a couple Ancient 3s and a couple Legend 4s or whatever balances out to that 0 weighted average? What do you think is better in that aspect?
I can go first, Walsh, if you want.
Yeah, please do. I got to think about that one.
I've always been more inclined to say a balanced team is a healthier team. Because when you have a top heavy and a low heavy team, is at a certain point in the game, the low heavy players are going to get lost. And you're going to end up having to take yourself out of your job, your role, and what you're doing in the game to put yourself in their shoes and figure out what they should be doing. And you, as a player, you never want to do that, right? Like, I think some of the worst questions you can ever ask your teammates is, what should I buy? Because then it tells me something fell apart in our game plan and you're not reading the situation. And there's some situations where you're buying an item specifically for somebody else, right? And you'll be like, okay, I have all the items I need to do my job. Carrie, what do you need to survive? Does it look like a force staff? Does it look like a glimmer? Like, what is it you need? So sometimes that question's okay, but when they're like, hey, should I get this or that? Then all of a sudden, everybody in the game takes themselves right out of their shoes, right out of exactly what they're thinking at the time to be like, maybe this. Mm-hmm. And so you just fuck your players over. And then the enemy team's preying on these lower skilled players. The lane has this weird power dynamic. I'd much rather see my team be like equal across the board.
It's different levels of Dota that you're playing on a daily basis too. Like, let's not forget, you're not only playing in League, you're also playing in pubs. So let's say we'll go once again with like the Ancient 1 average. Say you have an Ancient 5 on your team. They're playing a significantly different game than what a Legend 1 would be playing, right?
Yep.
And when you get into the game, when you have a couple people playing one rank of play, and then a couple people playing another, then your overall gameplay and dynamic just falls apart because you have, like you were saying, half the guys know what needs to be going on, what they should be doing, the items they should be building, the overall game plan, and the other half are just lost in the sauce.
I mean, I completely agree. I agree with what you're saying. I just want to touch though the saying. I think that saying that it's a big deal to ask about item choices is an interesting concept. I think that personally, I prefer people who are not afraid to ask items, so that when I look over, I don't see you building Skull Bash your first item on Dawnbreaker support, and I just go,
Hey,
"What? What are you doing there, bud?"
So, but the thing is clearly people don't understand what their job is in the game, and that comes down to your poor pre-game planning as a team. It's different in a pub, right? You don't know what the hell that fucking idiot's gonna do in a pub. But when I'm with my team and we have a game, like, we have a pretty general idea of what your job is in that game and what items we need to do that job.
Yeah, you're essentially breaking down pub players and tournament players. And there's a big aspect, and some people who play in tournaments are pub players, and
Yeah.
they don't necessarily excel. And just like how there's people who excel in tournaments, don't necessarily excel in pubs. Because, especially for me, in my experience, in a support aspect, right? And God, especially in position 4. So when I'm seeing position 4 and I'm seeing guys who are just exploding the rank, a lot of times they're just building a slower core. But when it comes to tournament stuff, you have to actually understand your role, what you need to be doing, and sacrifice your core items to make the game easier for everybody else, because there's got to be that trust level. And most pub players don't understand, hey, I need to trust the person next to you. They're used to basically being that fourth core
Exactly.
and winning the lane from there. And that's the position where I see the biggest discrepancy of pub players and tournament players. Position 5 a little bit as well, and position 3. 3, you get the picks of like, I'm gonna run I don't know, fucking Weaver 3 for no goddamn reason other like at all, or God, the freaking Wraith King 3s. And they're like, well, I'm just gonna carry from here because I'm better. And it works sometimes in pubs. It doesn't work in tournament because you're all of a sudden leaving a giant gap in your game plan and what needs to be done in order to win the game.
Plans that really hope and depend on the idea that the enemy team just doesn't know how to end a game, I think is just a really bad plan, period. But that being said, it's also a matter of just, you see that also in your pubs, like you were saying, even in the mid lane, right? I mean, mid Alchemist, I think, is just such an absolute troll. Or mid Dusa. Like, you need to be planned around your entire team, and not just this idea of like Sigma male gonna solo carry from mid grind set. Like, I hate that mentality of like, I'm just gonna play something really heavy.
There is a place for it, but there's an adjustment, and you got to make sure your 1 can do it. Because when you do that shit, that's the new 1, which means that you need to have a 1 that can play essentially the position 2, play faster, play earlier without the level advantage.
Yeah, you're looking at like the
there's a very like low amount. Like, you brought up Lorenzo. Like, Lorenzo's Ricky can do that shit, and you could play somebody that's a little bit more greedy, like the Alchemist mid, like the Dusa mid, but you have to run something that's at position 2. Like, I bring up Lorenzo, his Ricky, that can do that shit, or those who can run. There was some team this past season in Champion League that ran a Leshrac 1. And that's another thing, or those Necros. Like, those are the 2s. They get to play early. They can still flash farm and stuff like that. But they're going to be joining fights while your true position 1 is sitting in that mid lane, and they're actually getting the farm priority. But if you have, say, like, I'm playing a pub and I fucking pick, I don't know, shit, like Dusa, we'll say, and then my mid laner picks Alchemist, like, what the fuck's gonna happen?
You just don't want to play.
Yep.
Oh,
at that point,
go next. Or those 5s that pick Dusa.
Those postulating mages.
one thing that irritates me is I'll pick Luna and then my mid will just pick another like hard carry, and it's like I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I'm like building Boots of Travels, Manta, and just like split pushing the map because there's no farm in the jungle because my Medusa's in there. And it's like games just get super wonky.
Mhm.
Ugh.
So the next thing I want to talk about is when you get your new team set. Let's just say that we're a little bit farther down the road. We've got our team roster set. Everyone's agreed. Hey, we're running it. We're pot of GS this season. And when, as a captain, do you believe that you need to start, um, say, doing pubs or scrims or things like that?
I actually have a
When,
really
honestly,
strong
when do you
opinion on this.
start starting scrims?
Um, I've never enjoyed people thinking about, other than finding out where they're playing next season. I've never been a big fan of people like working with their new teams and like taking focus away from the current team to worry on what's next past the this is where I'm going to play next season. I've never liked watching teams like players not play with their current roster to go play with their next season roster in pubs. It just grinds my gears. You made a commitment to this team, like follow through with it. Everything you're doing right now, like again, like they own your rights. You're their property almost. Like do your due diligence.
Yeah,
Put in the effort.
I'm with you on that. At the same time, like define that though. Like, does that mean they're never allowed to play pubs with their team?
Unless none of your other 4 teammates are on, kinda.
Okay, so literally, if one of your other teammates from the team you're in on currently is on, you need to be looking to play with them. Otherwise, no.
They should be their first. They should be the higher priority, in my opinion. Yes.
I mean, that is a definite. That one I'm not going to disagree with you on. The way that you were saying it is like you need to not touch or associate yourself with that team at all until.
But like, then we also get into the point of like, are you working on strats with them? Are you practicing different heroes than what I would want you to be playing? Like, there's a lot that goes into prepping for your next team, which might be actually subtracting from what I want you to do. If I want you to be playing, let's say, Axe Brewmaster, and you're out there playing Kunkka Legion Commander with your new team, you're not, even though no one's available on my team, you're not even practicing the heroes that I want you to be working on right now.
Yeah, to that I can definitely agree. Like, imagine if if it's the case of like the two of us, it's like if you're captain and I'm not, and I tell you, like, you're telling me to get used to playing like Mars more, and I tell you, oh, I haven't had time because I've wanted to show. Well, I've not been doing that because I wanted to show my new team, like how I play Axe and Brewmaster. And it's like, that's fucked, right? Because then you're like, why are you showing your new team what you can do when this season isn't over, right?
If you were playing the Mars with your new team, then I'm like, fine. Like nobody was available. You're still practicing the heroes I want you to play. Go ahead, play with the guys, But you have to prioritize, I think, your current team first.
I mean, that I agree with entirely. Like, the season that's not over, you need to focus on, but go ahead and find yourself a squad that you're looking like you're going to play with this season.
Especially if you're like you're going from like off lane to mid or something, and then I see you playing mid heroes. Like, it's just like, come on, man. Like,
Yeah.
if this is the case, we're obviously in the final weeks, like just final days. Just ride it out,
Yep, I agree.
But when do you feel is appropriate to, let's say the season's over, and let's say your team got knocked out first round, didn't make playoffs, something like that, you got your full next stack. When do you start wanting to play scrims prior to the next season? Because like we were saying, there's the idea of the scrims that are for the drafter. Pubs are for the players and learning how to play with each other and things along those lines, and honestly getting creative and all that. But when do you feel like, hey, it's time we're going to start scrimming?
So is it a brand new roster?
Brand new, like say brand new roster, or hell, even just 1 or 2 new people, or even hell, like the same. Like, give me your scenarios.
Mine's like a really simple rule. It's when we're consistently winning pubs. That's the simplicity of it. When you've mastered the tier that you need to starting, which is just, hey, can we beat just a group of strangers who have just kind of gotten in a pub together to play? Like, are we able to do that? Because if we're not, then we have some real troubles. And if we can't do the very least of beating that, then we need to I need to either kick somebody and drop somebody and add somebody new until this works, or there's no reason to even go to scrims if we can't even win a pub. That's my mentality, period.
I would disagree. To me, that's like saying I'm only going to practice offense, defense, and say fuck special teams. Um, there's your drafter needs practice, and if you say we can't win pubs, so we're never going to scrim, that basically says that my drafter gets to practice week 1, 2, 3, and 4 going into the season. Your drafter needs practice, just like the rest of the team needs to practice heroes and things like that. Your drafter needs to be able to see somebody that's actively drafting against them and playing those drafts against each other so that ideas can come out. Like you can take your draft plans and stuff from the pubs that you play, but you need to practice to be able to maneuver the draft because it is such a delicate and really difficult thing to do and learn. And if you're out of practice on it, then you're going to make a lot of mistakes. So you need to make sure that you get that practice for yourself.
I get you.
It is a
So-
very important phase of the game, and if you're not showing appropriate importance to it, then I feel like once again it's like we're going to practice offense, defense, but we're going to say fuck special teams, which is a third of the game. You know what I mean?
So for me, I think both of you both of your points are absolutely valid. There is the perspective of, well, if we can't win a pub, it doesn't matter what happens, because even if we navigate our draft and we get the heroes, if we can't execute, you know, does the quality of the draft even matter at that point, or if we're just failing to win? But at the same time, you have to figure out how you're going to navigate these drafts. These are two super important ideas. And so, like, ideally it would look like we play until we win pubs, and then we start joining, leagues and tournaments, and start like looking for scrims, and then start working on our drafts, right? But again, 82L has it's not waiting for anybody. It's going to start with or without you.
Yeah, that's
And
a
so-
good point. That is a really good point. We brought up, I think I was talking to you about this, Ben, within the season. There's times where you're down, you're like, I fucked up the draft, and I'll straight up told you the draft was good. We didn't execute. You know what I mean? Like there is, like you were saying, there is that point of you do need to be practicing and playing pubs and learning to play together so you can learn to execute properly. And if you don't, like, it doesn't matter what the draft is if you don't execute. Um, I do think there's a balance, and typically what I prefer to do is a week before or a week and a half or even 2 weeks before, maybe get a scrim here and there. But until then, we're focused on pubs. And guys will ask me, hey, what do you want me to play? I don't give a shit. I want to see what you do. I want to see just, hey, you're really fun. Like, my 4 feels really good on this hero. My 3 feels really good on this hero. Does it work together? And if it does work together, then phenomenal. That's into the draft plan. If it doesn't, then now we're thinking along the lines of, okay, they're really good at this. Let's try, maybe next time I'll tell them, try a different combination. Like you play your hero this time, and then you try to match it with something else. And then you kind of mismatch to find those combinations. And then you get the draft ideas off of that. And then you move into the scrims later on. But yes, like Ben is 100% correct. You got to win your pubs first. But there's a time where I really believe going into the season, first one maybe as far out as 2 weeks, get a scrim here and there. It doesn't have to be a lot. You don't have to play 4, 5, 6 scrims a week, but you need the scrims here and there in order to figure out the draft and start playing and get your drafter practice going in.
Yep.
To add on to that, like, ideally, if you could wait, and what I would say would be like the ideal situation is, like, you're winning like 60 to 70% of your pubs for a couple weeks, and now you can start scrimming and like working on the finer shit. And then once you get that done, then it's like, okay, now you start looking at events and stuff. But again, this is just 82L.
Right.
You're just trying to get all this done right before the season starts and get into it, right? And especially like in amateur event, there's not that many big events you can join.
Speaking
It's not like,
of,
hey, I'll skip this event and just join a new event. But yeah, speaking of,
how many leagues do you think is a good number to play in? Like, do you feel like multiple leagues is a good idea, or do you feel like it's a bad idea? Personally, Todd agreed, played in Pack one season and 82L, and it was fucking mentally exhausting. For a lot of reasons.
Same rosters or different rosters?
It was the exact same roster. I
I
do know, like, say, Team Vicious is in multiple different leagues. I know there's a couple teams that are in 82L and MD2L for most of the same roster, maybe not entirely. And then there's 4 rosters, say, that play in PSGS Invitational and also play in 82L. Do you feel like maybe 2 leagues is fine, or leagues in an occasional tournament? Maybe just stick to one? How do you feel about that?
I feel like leagues plus tournaments is the best way to do it. Once you have too many long running commitments, your potential for burnout just drastically starts increasing.
Especially for the
And
captain,
I
whoever your
kinda-
drafter is, who has to do all the research. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I like I'm saying, like I'm also extrapolating from what you kind of alluded to earlier, but I could definitely see that being much more of a problem. So I'd stick to one league plus tournaments, personally. What about you,
What do you,
Oshie?
Walshy?
I do like I like short tournaments, like short weekend kind of just slugfests. I think those are fun because, in full honesty, I'm like, look, get a general idea of what this team is doing and then just go from there. I think that it really comes down to just the comfort of your team and also just like the kind of dynamic of your team. Like if you're if you're a bunch of like 18-year-olds who are all just like fresh in college and just want to do this for like a nightly thing, or like are in a club at school, like an esports club, which is a dope idea. Great, do it. Absolutely. Like it's bonding, it's great, it's team building, whatever. I think if you have a dynamic of people who are like 27, 30-year-olds, which, I mean, dude, that's like half of 82L. The other half being like 18, 12-year-olds, it feels like.
All the mids in the league.
Yeah. If you have that dynamic, then it's just different, I mean, look at our winning draft when we were in a winning comp when we were in contender, right? We had like a kid who was still in high school and a dude who has a kid and who has to like obviously take care of that stuff. And it just depends on if the team's up for it, great. If you got people that just can't dedicate 2 nights a week to staying up until like 11, 12 o'clock or anything of that nature, or just don't have the weekends for it, then that's a no-go.
Right.
I think it's just important. Like if you have the people up for it, do it. That would be mine. Like play as much Dota as you can. If you got everybody who's truly passionate about the game and wants to. If you don't force people to feel like they have to or pressure them into it. Like if somebody's got kids or if somebody's like, got other responsibilities, then just understand it and don't even bring it up. That's my mentality.
Agree more. Last thing I want to talk about here. Hey, did you fellas see in about every single Discord server that new event that's coming up?
Hell yeah!
Oh my lord. JMO, tell me about it.
Praise, baby. MTL events. I'm telling you, boys, these are the events. PS Invitational, fuck that shit, boys. MTL events, that's what I live for. Dude, this one, we don't have all the details yet, but it's going to be a fucking banger. It's literally a pub event. I am so curious to see how this is being done, how they are scoring everything, how they're sorting all this information. Sounds like an absolute shit show. Glad I'm not on the back end of that. But like, boy, I hope I can play in a pub event.
Man, bless MTL and Kino. Man, I was talking to Kino earlier today, and what he was telling me is it's a really neat aspect of the way that it's drawn up, where you can have Immortals competing against Guardians, and it does not matter because Guardians are playing against Guardians, Immortals playing them against Immortals, and it's going to be along the lines of something that is only going to occur in pubs. And it's going to be logged. God bless you, like you said, whoever the hell is behind the scenes logging all this shit and keeping track of it. But it's something that every single person is going to be available into participating in. Dates are still to be determined, but if not the tournament, we gotta love the YouTube videos. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
A+ as always, MTL. Well, with that, we're gonna wrap it up. Get ready to take a seat in the town hall. It's coming up in about 30 minutes from now in our time as during recording. So can't wait for that. Thanks for listening and have a good night.
Letters.
Have a good one.